Welcome to another episode of Harvard Extension School Psychology Student Society. Today we have a very special guest. Her name's Lupita, and you might have met her because of our Wellness Wednesdays. And she's here with us, especially to help celebrate International Yoga Day. Lupita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Kimia, thank you so much for inviting me to this space and for trusting me with your listeners. My name again, Lupita, and I'm a Mexican national. I am an immigrant to the United States. I consider myself very American now, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today. I've been practicing yoga since I was 14, and so it's something that's very, very special to me. I've since then founded a corporate wellness company, which I focus on wellness for individuals, communities, and corporations. I have recently graduated from Harvard University doing my master's in psychology, and I am now scaling wellness.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know you donate so much of your time in helping others. And even just for our society, you have donated many hours. You've met with us for, I think, 2 months now. And I hope we can continue on for our Wellness Wednesdays, because I think it's really helping people. I really appreciate that you're so dedicated to what you practice and what you believe. How did you actually start your journey? I know you started at 14, but how has it been through the years?
So thank you for asking that question. I think it's a really important one and something that's really close to home. So I started my journey at the age of 14. My mom actually took me to my first yoga class. At that time, she was dealing with a lot of domestic abuse in my home through a separation, through a divorce, and she was desperate. She went to therapy, a women's shelter in Houston, Texas, and after a few months of therapy, somebody said, you should try yoga. And we were actually doing therapy as well with her. So it was a great practice to have yoga as an augmented healing modality to help process the emotions, just all the pain that we were dealing with. And I went to my first class and I was hooked. I just loved the connection. I loved the mantras. I loved the movement. It was really exhilarating for me. I came out of my class just feeling like a new person, and I literally haven't stopped practicing since that day.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think that's incredible that it made such an impact, a positive impact on your life, and thankfully for your mom as well. And thank you for trying to help others with what you have learned. And I can tell from seeing you every week through our Wellness Wednesdays that you have a lot of years of practice and knowledge in the field. I know during the Wellness Wednesdays event, you talked about yoga beyond poses. What does that mean exactly?
Another wonderful question. I love hearing this question, and I love kind of explaining my side of it, my point of view. So when I started yoga, it was mostly a physical practice. It was rooted in the breath, it was movement, but I didn't know much about the philosophy of yoga. It was only until I was about 17 that I heard my first mantra, which was Om Mani Padme Hum. And it's basically the no mud, no lotus mantra of resilience and beauty through pain, right? This is a mantra that is written in scrolls all over northern India and Nepal. And you can see monks in the Himalayas and in Nepal kind of turning these wheels daily that have Om Mani Padme Hum written on them. 20,000 times, but it's written 20,000 times. They're not turning it 20,000 times. I didn't know what this mantra meant though. I just heard it and I started crying. It was a literal like cleansing of my soul. And I didn't know I was crying. I didn't know what that meant. And I started listening to mantra and kirtan, which is call and response, a really beautiful yogic practice and spiritual practice in India. I started listening to mantra just every day. And I would just feel so emotionally connected. And I didn't even know what these words meant. I didn't know what I just knew I felt really connected and good and healed. And later on, I was walking through. It was funny. I moved to Los Angeles, and I was in Santa Monica, and I was walking down the street, and all of a sudden I heard this mantra, like people chanting, and I was called to like follow that sound, and I landed in a yoga studio called Bhakti Yoga Shala, which is a Bhakti practice of Bhakti is one of the forms of yoga of devotion. And I literally learned so much my from my time in that space with other people that were bhakti yogis. And I learned then that yoga just meant so much more than moving your body and practicing your, breath control. It meant connection to everything. I mean, through that, I later got certified as in that space. It's not really a certification. He doesn't call it that. It's just like you go to this school, this bhakti school. And Govindas was my Upa guru there. And he basically, through a year kind of taught me the way of devotional yoga. And we read the Bhagavad Gita. We, dissected some of the Vedas, some of the Upanishads, some of yoga sutras from Patanjali. I mean, we these are all, sacred Vedic texts that are very ancient, and just dissecting that and kind of learning for example, 8 limbs of yoga, or the dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna, to me was just such an incredible lesson in life, especially because I had gone through so much pain. And it really just allowed me to connect way more than I ever had. And so I really owe a lot to not just the practice of yoga, modern day yoga, what is known now, that a lot of society thinks of it as just a physical practice, or even breath. It has so much more depth in morals and ethics and dharma, and asking yourself what your purpose is, in conceptualization, and just like life, So yeah, that's basically my story with yoga.
That's incredible. And also, I just want to mention, I'm so sorry that you've been through hard situations and pain, but I'm so glad you found yoga. You found something that worked for you. And I think it's amazing that somebody was, how you mentioned that you heard the chant and it kind of drew you in, and sounds like what you needed, what you were looking for all along. So that's a really powerful story. And I'm not sure if this is where it started, but I know you've been to India many times because you've been studying this for a long time. You're not just practicing it at home, you're also teaching others at this point. And I think for many years, you've actually been teaching it. Would you like to share some of your stories about your travels? Because I know you have done retreats, you've practiced yourself in India. Would you like to share some of your stories with our audience?
Yeah, I love that. Yes, so I feel, such a connection to India. Even before I went to India, I felt like I was already Indian in a way, just because I was just so rooted in this practice. And I actually look a little bit Indian, and so people always confuse me with being Indian. So I'm actually always like, oh, great, you know. Um, and that's the funny thing, is that I think people who are connected to that practice also recognize, I think, my continuous devotion to it. So I went to India for the first time. I believe I was 23 or 22. And I went because I wanted to deepen my practice even more. I had already been to this Bhakti yoga school in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica. And I was kind of desiring the real yoga, right? Because of course, every yoga is real, and there's no real or not real yoga. It just is, yoga is just connection, really. So there's no real or wrong. But but I thought I really want to go to the place where it was it was formed or it was written about. So I did, and I booked a flight, and I landed in Mumbai at like 1 a.m. without a plan, and I just wanted to go see it. And everything led me, one thing that yoga has allowed me to do is to trust. I think that's one of the major takeaways and major lessons that I've had in my yoga journey is to trust the process and trust myself. And so I landed there without a plan. I ended up finding a retreat center in Goa, and I took the train there. And it was an incredible retreat center. And actually, one of the teachers from the retreat center is now my guru. He actually married me. He was at my ceremony in Turkey. He's like my life teacher. Definitely a great pillar in my life, but a very influential person to me. But yeah, I went to India. I was there for a few months the first time. After the yoga training, which is another, podcast we could talk about, is just like the training that this was getting up at 4 a.m. every day, doing meditation, doing jalanati, cleaning, doing a bunch of shakharmas and cleansing exercises before the actual philosophy part of the discussion and learning, and then doing 3 hours of continuous movement, yoga poses, which is the asana part, and then doing mantra and japa, which is mantra meditation or like repetition of sound. And I mean, it's like all day you're doing some kind of yoga practice, which was put me it gave me so much discipline, because when I came back to the States after those 3 months, I was only there for 3 months the first time. My God, I was getting up at 3 every morning, meditating. I mean, I would meditate for almost 3 hours, or not just meditate, but do my practice and do all my cleansings and, just prepare for the day. And I was hired by a corporate company after that, working in logistics. And, it just having that route in the morning, that morning routine, just made me so much more efficient. It made me enjoy my job so much more. It made me connect with people on another level. And so I saw the benefits that yoga had on my efficiency at work as well, right? So that's why later on, fast forward now 10, 15 years later, I'm like working in corporate wellness, right? Because I understand the connected practices, how much influence they have on a person, and the way that they navigate life, and they navigate work, and they navigate everything.
That's incredible. I really love how it really changed your life. It sounds for the better. And I think what you're doing now is also helping students, because, Harvard Extension School, Psychology Student Society, we're all students here right now. So we are going through a lot of stress and dealing with difficult situations in our lives. What you have learned, I think, is contributing to our wellness as well. So I really thank you for doing that. Based on your experience, how do you think yoga benefits our well-being?
Yeah. So yoga is comprised of so many different parts. The physical practice is one of the ways that people stay healthy. They can connect with their bodies. So it really helps you, I would say, stay in shape in a way. There's some yoga practice that can be pretty intense, and you can burn a lot of calories in a yoga class if you're really active in your poses. And it helps with balance and concentration, because during a yoga practice, an asana practice, you are literally like listening to cues. So you're using a lot of the senses like touch, and you're listening, so you're hearing the teacher, and you're following, and you're watching the teacher. And so there's a ton of connection there with the brain, and like the mirror neurons that we have. We have also just being able to follow a sequence memorization. So there's a lot of, I feel like, having studied some neuroscience and during my program here at Harvard, just understanding the connections that happen in your brain when you're practicing such a complex tool, or modality, when you're literally immersing yourself in movement and breath and listening and cues and sound and concentration. There's so much action in the brain already, so it's really stimulating and very good for you. So the physical practice is great. There's certain parts of yoga like dharana, which is concentration, and dhyana, which are meditation, which really help also with focus and concentration. There's a connection to vagal tone when we practice pranayama or breath control. And this has been shown in several studies that, breathing into the diaphragm kind of helps activate the vagus nerve, which is connected to the brain and down the spine. And it really helps us regulate the nervous system. So there are many ways that yoga can help. I have a story, if I can share it, if we have time, I will share it. And this is just one instance in my life where I really saw yoga make a big impact on somebody. And so that's just one way, but there's so many ways, and I have several stories, but there's one that really stands out. Yeah, so there's a physical, there's a mental. Yoga, I feel, for me, when I was younger, helped me emotionally process things because it gave me a space to feel safe and supported with a community, where sometimes in class I would just cry. It was like I couldn't cry at home, I couldn't cry at work, and it was like, oh my God, now I can just let go. And it's just so much is moving through the body in any given moment. And the way I like to explain it is that we hold tension in our body when we feel stressed. Like, a lot of people know those side effects of stress, sweaty palms, elevated heartbeat. However, that stuff sometimes transmits itself or transfers into the body. And you can feel it when you're tense in your back. If you have like a deadline, you can feel it in the head. And so what I like to say yoga is, it's like an EMS call, like an emergency services call. You literally are breathing. So when you're in a state of crisis, that's the accident that just happened on the freeway of your nadis, which is the nerves, or in yoga, we call it like the energy lines in the body, the energy pathways. But in the energy pathways, you can feel stuck, you can have an accident, or you can have a crisis. And the breath and the movement is kind of like that EMS service that shows up. And with your breath, you're pushing that out of the way with the twist, with the turns, with the holding, with the focus, so it's kind of like pushing everything out of the body. And that way, you are not only trusting yourself to do this, but you're also trusting the universe, the space around you, to take whatever it is that you let go of and transform it. Because in yoga, we also are we respect Mother Earth a lot. We respect just the cosmos a lot, right? And so it's all about that trust in yourself, trust in the cosmos, trust in nature, to hold, and then also to transform things for you.
I think I speak for everyone when I say we would love to hear your story. And I don't know if you want to share it right now or toward the end, but yes, anytime you want to share stories, would love to hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So let me share this. I was in Germany. I moved to Germany after working for 3M for about 4.5 years. And during this time in Germany, I had a few jobs. I was an au pair. I was studying consumer affairs. I was getting a master in consumer affairs at TUM, the Technical University of Munich. And I also lived in Kempten part-time, working as a barista at a coffee shop. The owner of this cafe was this German lady. She later became my German mom. One day when I was working, we had something really heavy that we were lifting, and I had troubles lifting it. And she was like, "Oh, but you do yoga." And she kind of like, gave me like a little elbow thing. She was like, "But you're a yogi, you should be strong, right?" and have those muscles. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, wow, yoga is like so much more than the physical muscles that you create in yoga, right? Like, and I love when people say that, because then I'm like, oh, okay, I mean, when you're ready to learn about yoga, man, you're gonna be mind blown, right? Like that's kind of my thing, is like, oh, this is gonna be great, right? So a few days later, she came in with some back pain, and I was like, oh, we should do some yoga. And I also have an oil that I can make for you to help you with that. So I blended some oil, like essential oils together, and I gave them to her the next day, and she put them on her back. She sat at night and she felt a lot better. And so then she came back a few days later and was like, hey, I want to try some yoga with you. I was like, oh, cool. She's like, can you come to my house? I said, yes. I showed up on time, because, Germans are all about being on time. Showed up on time, and we did some yoga together. We practiced, we did a sequence, we did some mantras, we did some chanting. And then an hour and a half later, she was kind of indifferent. She kind of was like, okay, thanks. And I was like, oh, okay, she didn't like it, right? So then I go back. I'm the following weekend, I was gonna come back to work at her cafe. I show up and she's like, hey, what do you think about doing a yoga session with me and my friends, like every week? I'll pay you. And I was like, well, I don't usually like teach for money. I've never really, I haven't really taught a lot. And she was like, no, just come. I'll get some people together. I promise we'll pay you good. I promise. And I was like, okay, fine. So 3 ladies at her house. And we were doing this for a few weeks. And one day, just one day, she's like, I have to share something with you. I was like, okay. And she said, every Friday I go get bratwurst, which is this the sausage, and it's in a patty. It's like a German thing that people do on the weekends, and it's like the food truck of America, but it's like German sausage in a wrap. She's like, every Friday I go and I get this, and it's the way my family and I bond. I meet with my girls and we go and eat this. And she goes, I don't want to go anymore. And I was like, oh my God, what? Why are you telling me that? Like, how are you? What? I was so worried, actually. I was like, why don't you want to go? Are you like depressed? What's going on? She said, Lupita, I love myself. And I just like, what? She's like, I just love myself. I love my body. I love myself again. I'm in love with myself again. And both of us just started crying, and she's like, and I just realized how unhealthy that food might be for me every week. And I just can't do it to my body. And so that literally, when I hear stories like that of how yoga has connected someone so much with themselves, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, in a way that they respect themselves so much, it's confirmed to me that no matter how you practice yoga, if you're connecting with yourself, whatever type of yoga you're doing, whether it's karma, jnana, bhakti, raja yoga, you are building a connection with yourself that really is a foundation for our harmonious life within your body and your mind and your spirit. And that's just one of the stories that I have, and I have many more, but yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a sweet story. And I think you've changed lives around the world, actually. I know if you share all your stories, we're going to get a chance to hear about your travels and the lives that you've changed. But thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. And I'm not sure if your German mom, as you mentioned, is going to be able to hear this, but we would love to have this podcast hopefully reach her. So
can I just say something, Kimia?
Sure.
She is now a yoga teacher.
Oh my God.
So she will listen to this and she'll be so happy. She did training just like a few years ago, and she sends me pictures all the time of her, and she actually met another yogi that she loves. And I also want to say too that, I know you just said like you've changed so many lives. I really don't think it's me. I think it's just the practice. And it's really the connection of the practice. It doesn't have to be called yoga, like, for example, my husband, he loves music. And I always tell him that's his yoga. His music is his yoga. It's just the way that he connects with himself, and he can let go of stress and of everything else. Yeah. So I thank you for saying that, but I do want to say like, it's not.
I know your lovely personality and your knowledge has a huge impact on the effect of what you do and what you teach. It is definitely the yoga too, but I know it's also your hard work and knowledge incorporated, and they all come together into a beautiful thing and help others. And I know you're really big on making sure that it can benefit everyone, no matter their fitness level, body type. Can you tell us a little bit more about how yoga can be adapted to suit different types of people?
Yes. So, this is something really close to me too. I grew up with two disabled family members in wheelchairs. One was fully paralyzed and one was just paralyzed from the hips down. And so I've always had an inclination to just be inclusive in all aspects of life, not just wellness and health and stuff, but just in connection and relationships and support. And so when I started my yoga journey, I remember I would tell, my family, like, we have to do some breaths. And, obviously my mom and I were already, and my sister were already in therapy and doing a lot of group work with other women and children like ourselves in the same situations. But we also incorporated our family into some of these things. And sometimes we would, get into some breath or some poses. And I always had to make it accessible for my uncle who was in a wheelchair and my aunt. And just recently, I think I did that a few times. But that was always in the back of my head. Like, I have to make this accessible, because if my whole family can do it, then it means it's good, because I have every kind of disorder in my family. So then I thought, okay, now, fast forward, I took a trauma-informed yoga teacher training, and that really showed me like, oh, there's not just like, accessibility parameters that we have to cross. It's also just emotional and psychological diversities that we have to learn how to teach for. And so being trauma informed has taught me so much more about using inclusive language and inclusive emotional, cues. And so that's another part of it is it's not just the body type, it's also the psychological component of it, and the mental and the emotional. For example, one time I was teaching in, where was I teaching? In Santa Clara in California. And a girl came into my class, and it she didn't want to be touched. And so that was one thing that I learned really early on. It's like, ask for permission, let people know that, if you're going to be hands-on during class. Some people have a lot of trauma with touching, right? And so we have to be really, really extra careful as people who are trusted with someone's emotional and health, to be able to kind of navigate that room and that space and hold and support a safe environment for these people, for everybody.
I think that's really wonderful to mention. And also, I love that you actually majored in psychology as well, and you just finished your degree from Harvard. So what you do, I think it's very well connected to psychology as well. And I don't know if you want to talk about your startup, which is also incredible, and I think it's going to benefit many people. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my startup is a stress management platform. It is designed to help individuals better cope with stress in their life. And so, because of my work in wellness, when I started working in like yoga, let's just say yoga and meditation, and starting to share these practices, I was really doing it just for donations because I had a full-time job that was paying me well. I had a corporate job at 3M, then I had a corporate job at a logistics firm, and I was making pretty decent. I mean, I was making a good living, and really, what I was doing on the side was my passion project. It was just sharing from my heart, sharing yoga, sharing meditation, sharing mindfulness and wellness, and my thing was always like wellness for all, right? And so I would go to, for example, Casa Juan Diego, I started when I was very young. It was an immigrant shelter for illegal undocumented immigrants in Houston. And I started, taking children out and having them move their body and connect with their breath. That's like, I was 15 when I started doing that, right? And it was only like, I was volunteering. It was only like, nobody was paying me to do this stuff. So, and then, as I grew older and I was making more money, of course, I was just able to give, I was able to buy yoga mats and host sessions every Sunday, for example, in the cities where I was. So, for example, in Germany, I hosted Sundays, Sunday yoga by the river, by the Ila River, which is where I lived nearby. When I traveled to different places like the Congo in Africa, I was doing donation-based yoga for children of nearby villages. When I was, everywhere I would go, I would just try to like give, right? Try to teach and try to share. And so I always really loved to do that. And when I was living in San Francisco, I was asked kind of to lead corporate wellness sessions. And that was like the first time I had really ever done that. I mean, for the jobs that I worked at, like the logistics job, I was director of social corporate responsibility there. And since they knew I did wellness and yoga, they were like, oh my God, come teach a class. But that was really also volunteering. I never really, really did it for money. But this organization, Kaiser is the organization. I got a contract with Kaiser in leading their yoga and their wellness for some of their teams and their employees and staff. And that was like a huge wake up call to me to see how stressed people were in the workplace. I was like dumbfounded because I knew that people were stressed because I knew my sister had gone through a lot of stress. She works at DHL, global forwarding, and she's always been in logistics. I know that corporate and the corporate world that we were in was very stressful, but I was like, oh my God, it's not just there, it's here. I mean, people are, no matter where, if they're an admin or they're nurses or they're surgeons, they are so stressed. So we have to build programs around that. So I started building these programs, these yoga classes that were like yoga therapy, almost like people could process and also go to a yoga class and move their body and connect with their breath. And, we did affirmations, we did sound baths, we did workshops on stress management, burnout. And my company now, well, what I noticed is that yoga and meditation is great. I love it. It's helped me all my life, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But it still doesn't solve the problem, right? The problem is that we have stressors in our life and that life is messy, right? Life is always going to be like that. And so what I noticed in these corporations is that we are not dealing with stressors because we don't know the techniques, we don't have the tools. And also there's a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy that I learned throughout years of therapy that I thought would be very helpful to incorporate as well. So I created a stress management system manually that I was incorporating in my sessions, which really was validated by a lot of teams at different corporations. And so where this is leading to is how now I want to scale this. I want to scale it and build it into an application that can be accessed by not just people in corporations, but also community members of of or minority community members, for example, women of color, men of color, BIPOC, all kinds of communities that might not have access to therapy. And of course, this is not a replacement for therapy, but it definitely helps to process stress and understand, maybe the specific stressors that you have in your life. And so my goal is to build this application platform and then also translate it into different languages so that people can better cope with their stress. Because I believe that by coping with stress, we can build a kinder society and we can just be kinder to each other, live in a more harmonious way.
That's beautiful. And I know you work really hard on this application that you're trying to create. And for your startup, if it's okay, I would like to share your Instagram with our followers. So if they want to join you and watch your incredible story, because you travel the world, you are always busy, either building something, teaching, traveling. And I think it's really interesting for people to see your hard work and see the difference you're making around the world. Would it be okay if we share your Instagram with our followers?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah. You can share it on the podcast page, and it's also yoga_from the heart. Just basically, yeah, yoga_from the heart. And feel free to follow. I post a lot of personal stuff on there too, because I always believe in like being authentic, and I'm really just sharing from my heart. There's no like follower quota that I want to meet or anything like that. It's just really sharing the story of connection.
When I watch your stories, I'm like, I love it. I love that you share with us. And we kind of get to live through your journeys with you. For example, I think you traveled to Egypt, Morocco. Would you like to share any of your stories? Do you have any special stories you want to share about the retreats that you've done?
Yeah. So I do retreats. What I try to do is when I go somewhere. So I love to travel. And when I go somewhere, I always ask myself, is this place retreatable? That's like one of the things I ask myself. Can I bring people here so I can share the magic of this country with people? So for example, my first one was in India, of course, because when I went there, I just felt, and I had traveled a lot before India, but India was a place where I thought, okay, this place is like a retreat place. And it really, the opportunity to do a retreat in India just kind of came to me because, oh my God, that's another story. But it was I didn't even plan it. It just happened. And I ended up doing 3 retreats in India. And then I wanted to expand my portfolio. And one of my friends was going to Bali and I tagged along, and I didn't do it because I didn't think I was going to expand in Bali. But then when I was in Bali, I was like, oh my God, this place is incredibly spiritual. They practice a lot of yoga in Bali, and they're a very health conscious community there, very spiritual, very disciplined. So I was like, okay, this is totally retreatable. So then I started doing retreats in Bali. And then, I travel around the world just because my husband and I now also love to travel together. And so we keep going to places and exploring. And then the other country that I thought was very retreatable was Morocco. And so, it takes a lot of energy to plan retreats in international locations, just because you have to find the place, the stays. You have to coordinate with local drivers and transport. You have to understand what the culture is like and be able to translate that to the participants on the retreat, so that we're also not only respecting the culture of the place that we're going to, but we also have a obligation as part of my company to give back to the communities that host us. So for example, in Bali, we go and we pick green beans from a farm. So we give the farmers the day off and they can go do yoga while we pick the fruits and vegetables. And then we have to take the fruits and vegetables and help cook them in the food kitchen, for example. So that's like one of the ways we give back And so they're able to just take the day off and be with their families or go have yoga or go do yoga, etc. In India, we partner with the Mother House, Mother Teresa, and we do some seva there. And then in Morocco, we did something very, very special. We raised close over, I think it was $2,500 that we raised, but we also raised like over 5,000 in like just school supplies for a local school in the mountains of Mount Toubkal, which is the highest northern range and the highest mountain range in North Africa. And so when you go and you hike in these mountains, usually it's, it's, if you are an avid hiker, you go and hike these mountains, but there's villages nestled in between the peaks, and these villages are very remote. And so usually kids have to walk miles to get to a school. And these schools are very primitive. They don't have a lot of things. And so what I did was when I went to Morocco with my husband and I started thinking like, maybe we can do a retreat here. I saw the need of these schools and I partnered with a local teacher there, and we delivered boxes and boxes of school supplies, and we spent the day with the children, and we're now working on a bigger fund for them to help get them, some devices that, so that these children don't stay behind also on the journey of like, the rest of the world. Because if you look at the rest of the kids, like they're already doing so much with tech, so much with things. And for me, it's like these children are the future. And I'm just in love with seva, with the act of selfless giving. So all of my retreats always have a seva component. And we always have many other components that we take from like the Ashtanga lineage, which is like the yamas, which are the social disciplines, and the yamas, which are the self-disciplines. We have obviously the asana, the physical poses, but we also have like dhyana and dharana, which are concentration and meditation. And we do this through a form of Buddhist vipassana, where we are silent for one whole day. And so that really gives participants a chance to look inward. And so, yeah, the retreats that I host are not like, oh, go to the beach and hang out, for a week and do some yoga in the morning and have some really healthy food. No, it's like we're really going to do the work because that's life, right? And how do we become better humans? And how do we become better parts of this world? And so, yeah, I try to incorporate that in my retreats.
That sounds like a retreat I want to join. Do you actually share your retreats with your followers? Like, how can people join you for the retreats?
So I usually market them and post them all over my social media and on my website. My website is Heartga, like the heart and then -ga.com. And a lot of people can go on there and see what's next. I haven't planned any for this year because of stressy of my startup, and also because of school. And, it takes a lot to just plan it, even if it's the same location. But yeah, my goal is to have at least one every year coming forward, or moving forward. And yeah, and I'm looking to also expand to other places. Morocco is divine, and Bali is divine, and oh my gosh, India is divine. But I'm sure there's a lot more places, because a lot of times it's the same people coming to the retreat, so they're like, okay, we don't want to go back to Bali. Can you do like somewhere else? So I'm thinking of how, what the next place would be. And I'm also thinking about doing some local retreats like in the US. And also maybe exploring Mexico, because I'm from Mexico and I love my country. And I was always kind of scared to do something in Mexico because of the safety aspect. But actually, like, I've been traveling so much to Mexico and it's so safe. And I think like I was kind of brainwashed, in a way by like the media. And I'm like, no, it's so safe. Like, I love it, and especially I would love to incorporate some kind of helping and seva in my own country, because that's where I'm from, right?
Yeah, I love the aspect of your retreat that is also giving back to the community and familiarizing the people that come with you to the culture of wherever you're traveling. Because I think often when people go to retreats, they kind of see it, like you mentioned, like a travel plan, as like a vacation and just sitting at the beach and doing yoga and this and that, but you're really getting them to know the people and the culture. So I think that's really beautiful. And it's just one of the other wonderful things that Lupita does that we really appreciate. The other thing that I wanted to add, I'm so excited to have Meghna here with us today as well. She's our amazing Director of Communications for the Harvard Extension Psychology Student Society. And she was actually the one that brought to our society's attention that it was International Yoga Day on June 21st. And it also fell on Wednesday, which we have Wellness Wednesdays with Lupita every week. So it worked out really well. And now we're doing a podcast. So we invited Meghna to join us today. She is in India. She shared incredible videos and photos from International Yoga Day in India. And I shared it on our social media so everyone can see and take advantage of her kindness for sharing the videos with us. Meghna, I know you've been with us through this podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself? And also, if you want to ask any questions from Lupita, please go ahead.
Yes, it was an absolute pleasure being a part of the podcast. And I really, really appreciate Lupita's. I mean, it was so encouraging and so inspiring, her stories about her travels and her retreats. In fact, I was talking about the International Yoga Day. The idea of dedicating a day to yoga and its global significance was proposed by our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, during his address to the United Nations General Assembly on September 27th, 2014. And at the HESPSS, we cater to mental health primarily also because I thought, why not, when we do Wellness Wednesdays with Lupita, and this year the International Yoga Day fortunately fell on the same day. So it just clicked that why not we celebrate it together with our global community. And yes, so that's how it happened, and that's how the idea came up. And I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have grown up in a family that actually prioritized physical health. And from an early age, my family, my mom primarily emphasized the importance of taking care of our bodies and leading an active lifestyle. Engaging into regular physical activities and primarily yoga was a natural part of our daily routine. So I've not learned yoga from any expert. I don't teach yoga. I have basically learned it at home by looking at my mom. My brother and myself, both of us used to watch our parents get up early morning, 4:30 in the morning. And they used to spread out their mats and practice all the asanas, the breathing part, the pranayam, which that Lupita also mentioned, that's the term for it. So this upbringing had a profound impact on my overall well-being. And but during Lupita's conversation, something that really triggered me was the concept of seva. Um, we we practice yoga, and I have also. I practice my mantras, and I practice pranayam and the asanas. And also in general, we do a lot of seva in India, which is giving to the community. But I've never thought of it in terms of how how this could also be a part of my daily routine. Like, how Lupita mentioned that during her retreats she blends the concept of seva with yoga. So my question to Lupita is, how did she come up with this idea? I mean, blending seva with yoga. It does. I agree that it makes you feel really full when you actually give a part of yourself to the community selflessly. and that definitely exudes from Lupita's of social media space and the way she gives herself into the practice. So I would like her to shed some light on the seva aspect of her retreats and how she came up with the idea of incorporating it with yoga.
Thank you so much for that, Meghna. And I love sharing the space with you, and I'm just honored. So, wow, yeah, that's a great question. And I think the way that I see it is twofold. I have always liked to give. So I mentioned before, I was 14 or 15 when I first started volunteering at a refugee center shelter in Houston called Casa Juan Diego. I was, let me just backtrack. My father left us when I was 14. And that was when we basically had to start working. My sister and I, we had to start surviving. We didn't have anybody to pay our way. My mom was a single mother. We were about to lose our house and everything. And still, I was working all Friday night, all Saturday during the day. And on Sundays, I would get up and go volunteer and then go to work again. And it was, I don't think I would have done this if it was like effort for me. Because looking back, I'm like, I just did it because I think I just love people. I just really do. Like, I don't know what it is. I just love people. Like, that some people are like, they don't like people. I love people. So I think part of me was just like, I wanted to be around people. And what better way than to help people like me? I was undocumented half of my life here in the United States. So I always said, I have so many opportunities being who I am, and I'm working and I'm making some money. So why not go help, these moms and these kids who after like a year of my own therapy and yoga practice and stuff would possibly benefit from this too, right? That's what I thought. And so and there was a lot more to the volunteering. I would buy uniforms for the kids and bring food, and I would have like people, I would do fundraisers and have people donate like, bigger things that I couldn't afford and stuff like that. But I think I've always, at the heart of me has always been this part of my karma yoga, which is selfless service, right? And I thought, after that, I think it grew into like more yoga meditation donation services. Like I started just doing classes for free, and I would say, come as you are with whatever you have and practice for free, because there's so many barriers to wellness. One of them is cost. A typical yoga class costs $25 as a drop-in service. Like, who can afford that? I mean, me with the kind of job that I had, that was a huge chunk of my paycheck, but I didn't have kids. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities at that time, right? So it was extremely important for me to I just saw the need, and I was like, I have to give it. And, I heard this quote, and I don't know who said it one day, but it said, like, find what you love and give it away. And I literally like connected with that so much. Like, this is what I love. And when I went into Bhakti Yoga school, when we started learning about all the types of yogas there were, there is a yoga called karma yoga, and seva is basically one of the pillars of karma yoga. It's the act of selfless service. It's one of the ways that we can practice yoga, right? And so, this goes back into the Bhagavad Gita, it goes back into the Mahabharata, it goes back into these ancient texts, that when you read this, then it further confirmed that for me, that's what I was doing. And so it just made sense that when I created the first retreat, when I was planning it, I planned it in a way that we incorporate many aspects of the yoga philosophy, which one of those can be seva, right? Obviously, there's so many elements in yoga. There's so many concepts that you could focus on. And so that's why you take into account the culture, you take into account the environment of each place when you're planning a retreat to see what fits in the puzzle, right? And so, but yeah, that's basically how I did it, Meghna.
This is beautiful, actually. So, karma yoga is the path of selfless action, and I think that's the word that I was looking for. Sadly, I never thought of it in those terms, but thank you for enlightening me. Actually, by embracing the principles of seva, we can extend our yoga practice beyond the mat and into the world, like you're doing, actively seeking opportunities to serve and uplift others. And that's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. It's very inspiring.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up and also for asking that question, because I do think I think we humans, we're living in this world and we're constantly giving, whether we think we are or not. For example, this right now, we are sharing together. We're not only just practicing a form of yoga, which is like we are connecting through sound, right? And through sharing from the heart, but we're also teaching others, right? And sharing with others, which is another form of selfless service. So right now we can say that we're practicing karma yoga in a way.
Yes, which is amazing, which is really nice, and that's what I'm saying. I never thought of it in those. Even though we practice, we do seva, do a lot of seva in India, but I never sort of blended it with my yoga practice. And now thinking of this term as karma yoga, definitely I'm going to incorporate it more into my daily routine. And it was amazing. I generally practice this mantra, if you allow me to share it with you all during my regular practice. By the end of my daily yoga practice on the mat, I generally say this mantra out loud, which is Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu nirmaya, sarve bhadrani pasyantu, ma kadachit dukbhagvate, which means may all beings be happy, may all beings be free from illness, may all behold what is auspicious, may no one suffer. So I think that is yoga beyond poses. That is what the essence of the podcast today is all about. And Lupita is certainly an example for this entire concept. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the more I learn about you, Lupita, the more I see how perfectly you named your Instagram, which is yoga from the heart, because it is truly coming from your heart. You are giving to everyone the kindness that comes with you, the love that you have for people comes through. Even without being able to see you, because this is a podcast, I can hear it in your voice. And I really am grateful that the school brought us together and gave us this opportunity to get to know you and offer Wellness Wednesdays for everyone. And before we leave, is there anything you want to mention? Did we, because I know that we can go for hours, there's so much to talk about, but is there anything specific that you want to cover before we leave?
Well, I just want to say how honored and grateful I am to you, Kimia, for spearheading this psychological student association society. Sorry, I never say it right, but you know what I mean. It's a testament of who you are as a community leader and as a lifelong learner. And really, I feel like you are, in essence, practicing so much yoga every day just by sharing and by learning. And I just want to say, this master's program, this school has really invoked the jnana yoga in many of us, which is, the yoga of wisdom and knowledge. And I really feel so connected in this space. I feel more heard and seen by the Harvard community than many than other communities of my life. And when I joined Harvard, I never thought that I would be able to share like, such a special part of me in this space. And you are one of the people that really recognize me and sees me. And I just want to thank you so much for that. Thank you.
That's absolutely my pleasure. It was all you.
Lupita totally deserves it. I mean,
Yes,
she deserves
absolutely.
all of this.
Yes, she just, I don't know, she's like a ball of energy and kindness. She just shines brightly everywhere she goes. So it's not difficult to recognize her because everywhere she goes, she's glowing from inside. But before we go, I also wanted to mention Marty's been here with us. She's our new director of audio productions. She helped us get on Spotify. So hopefully this podcast will soon be available on Spotify. And it was her birthday yesterday. So I just wanted to wish her happy birthday. We're so grateful.
Happy birthday, Marty.
Happy birthday, Marty.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the shout out. I've been listening, of course, the whole time, and it's very enriching to hear from you, Lupita. And there was a lot of points that you made that I was like, wow, like when you were saying how your husband, when he listens to music, like that's his like yoga time. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I really enjoyed how you spoke about like being inclusive and accessible and like speaking on your experience with that, because I used to do a lot of yoga before my injury last year, and it was just like hard for me to figure out how to get back into it, like slowly and carefully. And it was good to know that there are ways to kind of adapt yoga to be more accessible. So that was really cool to hear.
Marty, I've been listening to your music. Like every time you post on Instagram, I'm like, oh my God. And I didn't even realize you were Marty. Like when you first introduced yourself, I think your camera was off. I was like, did not recognize you. I was
no
like,
worries. Yeah.
you literally are a bright star. And I remember meeting you. I remember us walking. And then I remember us being with you because you were on your crutches, on your thing.
Yeah. I don't have it. I don't use it anymore. So that's good progress. So that's been exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember your very kind and generous spirit when we met. That was something that sticks with me.
I am an active follower of Marty on Spotify. So you're just so good.
I appreciate you all so much. Thank you. Really, truly. I'm just grateful to be here. Thanks for Kimia for letting me come on board.
It's my pleasure. And you guys, if you want to check out her music, Marty is on Spotify, and she's an incredible artist. She's a songwriter, singer. I believe she also does music for movies, and very talented, very kind. Another one of the wonderful people that I met at this school. There are many things I'm grateful for because of this school, and majority of it is the people that I got to meet, including Lupita, Meghna, and Marty. Thank you guys for being here today. It was wonderful hearing from you. I'm very inspired. I feel like I want to do something to give back right now, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Bye, Kimia.
Thank you, Marty, Meghna, and of course, Kimia for making this all happen.
Lupita, I hope we're going to have you back soon again, because I know there are many topics we can talk about, not just yoga. We can also talk about your wonderful app that you're working on, because I have seen you work very hard on it. So maybe you can talk about your journey, especially because you work with Harvard Innovation Lab. And I hope we can have you back soon.
I would absolutely love that. I would love that. Count on me for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us today. And everyone, I hope you join us for another episode soon.